In the bustling heart of Lagos, Nigeria's economic engine, the fight for affordable, decent housing has become a generational struggle. Over 20 million residents call this city home, yet for many, securing a safe and dignified place to live feels nearly impossible. With an ever-growing population, Lagos is confronting an overwhelming housing crisis, unregulated urban sprawl, poor urban planning and skyrocketing rent prices trap millions in the grip of inadequate shelter. Underbridge shanties in Lagos highlights the severe housing crisis, where vulnerable residents build makeshift shelters beneath overpasses due to a lack of affordable housing. These communities live without basic services and face periodic government evictions, leaving them with few alternatives.
Wọ́n ti destroy gbogbo bíbá. Ọ̀rẹ́ mi ló sọ fún mi pé àyè kan wà níbí, mo dẹ̀ wá. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni àyè wà ńbẹ̀, mo dẹ̀ fún wọn ní 250. Wọ́n ní 250 ní táwọn bá fẹ́ fi bẹ̀ rent. Bí mi ṣe kówó yẹn lẹ́ni.
Everything is tough. That's why we get here, sure. So, and last month we came here. But though the man gave my mom 50,000 naira yesterday, and he said he will see us today. We are praying maybe if he could refund the 100k. Okay. Maybe I will move to Ikorodu. Then because my junior brothers, they are going to school here and they are also learning work in this place.
Despite these harsh conditions, the persistence of underbridge shanties reflects the resilience of the urban poor and stresses the urgent need for affordable housing solutions in the city. Lagos is a city of extremes, where glittering skyscrapers tower above decaying slums, stark symbols of inequality. Amidst the affluence, millions fight an uphill battle to secure even the most basic shelter.
It has been stressful because the kind of housing in Lagos, if you want to get a good housing, that means you have to pay big money.
For many, the crushing weight of exorbitant rent prices means living paycheck to paycheck with entire salaries swallowed by the cost of keeping a roof overhead.
My challenges increase, almost yearly increase. You know, a house that the first time I packed in, I pay 180. In less than 2 years, I started paying 600. So, and by now, it has shot up to around 1.4 million.
Agency fees pile up, often equaling several months of rent, forcing tenants into debt or desperation.
Recently now I have to move, so it has been difficult for me. Like I went somewhere last week now to check one around this Ishaga side. Nice place, but when the money, house rent was not the issue, but when the agency came in and was demanding something that was so like, I was like, oh no, I can't afford this one. How do I have to expect like 300 and something thousand just to get to a safe con? Like that. It's not the housing, maybe the house rent is just like 200,000 naira. The agency fee will be going like 150,000 naira, more than half of the money you are supposed to pay for it.
The term affordable is relative because you can get an affordable house, but you won't get what you want.
Those unable to afford formal housing are left with few choices, living in overcrowded, crumbling slums where safety, sanitation and dignity are luxuries out of reach.
I think that in Lagos you cannot combine affordable and decent. Do you understand? So if you are going to go for decent, you are going to have a lot of money. If you are going to go for affordable, then you should just maybe take out decent out of your mind. Yes.
The endless cycle of saving for rent leaves little for other necessities like healthcare, education, or the dream of upward mobility. It is a daily struggle that consumes more than finances. It consumes lives.
I'm getting a place, maybe I have to cut down on what I eat, cut down on where I go to, cut down on a lot of things. You just have to compromise, yes, that's the word.
You know, every month now you have to just break down your salary for you to just avoid unnecessary arguments with landlord. First thing I do is move my house rent first. That's the most important thing first, before I do anything we want to do with any money.
In fact, I pay my house rent, I renew around January. So around December, being a festive period, I hardly engage in festivities because I'm always scared that by January my rent will due.
Successive governments have pledged to tackle Lagos' housing crisis, but despite grand promises, the reality remains grim for millions. Well-intentioned policies often fail due to bureaucratic delays, corruption and inefficiency, leaving unaffordable housing programs rarely reaching those in need.
Bureaucratic delays and lack of transparency cannot be debated in Lagos State in terms of land acquisition, land development, and water view. Let's celebrate Lagos State because they keep attempting to find solution to this, but it's just that there are some entrenched interests.
The focus on short-term gains instead of long-term urban planning has led to the public housing initiatives serving only a few, while the majority remain in overcrowded, unsafe conditions.
Most times when housing or project is to be launched, 95% of what is being launched has been taken up by people who are more or less insiders. So when you even call them mass projects, the mass gets only maybe just 3% of it.
As new developments cater to the wealthy, vast areas of the city lack basic infrastructure, leaving many residents without essential services and a solution that seems perpetually out of reach.
If I build a house for 30 million and I get someone to buy it off me at 70 million or 65 million, I've made instantly a good amount of profit. But when you do affordable house, it usually comes and you pay so much, you do so much, but the return is not as huge.
Enforcement of housing regulations and demolitions in Lagos remains a contentious issue.
I think the power of regulation is in its enforcement, right? Almost anybody you speak to who knows anything about the Nigerian government will tell you that we don't lack any laws, right? I mean, some of our laws need to also maybe be revisited after, a long time, but really is the implementation. They say culture is built by what you applaud and what you penalize.
While regulations are meant to ensure orderly urban growth and safety, their application is often inconsistent and selective.
Unfortunately, we see a society where you can get almost anything you need, any pass you need, once you know the right people, once you grease the right palms. And unfortunately, that trickles down to our construction sites and will typically leave it, possible for people to have some of these sharp practices that we're against.
Informal settlements, home to millions of low-income residents, frequently face the threat of demolition, with the government citing urban renewal and safety concerns. However, these evictions often displace families without offering viable alternatives, pushing them deeper into poverty.
Everybody up, everybody up.
I think we have not learned so much lesson from what happened in Morocco. Morocco happened to be in a slum, and in the early 90s, that place was demolished and all that. And the people who were there, residents of Morocco, as at that time, up till this moment we talk, some of them are yet to find their feet.
Corruption within regulatory bodies allows illegal developments by wealthy individuals to go unchecked, while poor communities face harsh penalties. This unequal enforcement without proper resettlement plans or alternatives, demolitions only worsen the crisis.
If you're going to, rebuild those places, of course, that's what we always advocate. There is always need, for resettlement. And when we're not going to resettle them, you have to make sure that you provide them alternatives.
Efforts to close the housing gap have been further hampered by weak infrastructure, budget shortfalls, and policies that often cater to the elite. How long can this imbalance continue? A robust legal framework and thorough paperwork are crucial in addressing Lagos' housing crisis, as they underpin the regulation and safety of construction. Effective laws can ensure proper land use, enforce building standards, and protect tenants' rights.
Whenever you want to build, the first thing you have to do is not consent for the purchase of land. And then once you have gotten the government consent for the purchase of land, you get what is called the Certificate of Occupancy, CFO, that gives you the right of occupancy. Of course, the certificate of occupancy will come with zoning, or what they call land use information, to tell you whether that area is it residential, is it commercial, is it religious, or is it meant that it's free from government acquisition whatsoever. Always ensure that permits, all necessary permits and approval are obtained in right and they are current, not the one that you obtained 3 years ago, pre-building, and then you kept it inside. You don't have money to start the building then 2024, you got the approval in 2021. In 2024, you want to start building. Get third party to come and help you audit. Not only your engineer, get third party to come and help you do audit, to come and say, look, this building, this site, is it right? Because the people that are working with you might be so blinded by what they are doing and they don't, maybe they're blinded by the commission they're going to collect, blinded by the fact that it's only when they deliver to you that you pay them. So they are kind of, they only want to deliver positive news.
However, the implementation of these regulations is often hindered by bureaucratic inefficiencies and corruption, leading to inadequate oversight. Building collapses in Lagos frequently highlight the gaps in enforcement. Many structures are constructed without proper permits or adhere to safety standards, resulting in tragedies that could have been prevented.
Because you have seen people who got approval for 1-story building and turned into 3-4-story building. A case in point is one guy called Femi Fosco, who had gotten approval for at least a 14-story building, but decided to turn into a 21-story building. Of course, one of the buildings, towers at Ikoyi, collapsed and then even died in that rubble.
So I think there's two parts to these things, right? There's holding people accountable after the fact, and that's good. But for me, I think I lean more to the other part, which is prevention. Zero tolerance for it to even happen in the first place. Recently, the collapses that happened were in Ikoyi, they were in Oniru, If you know about the Ikoyi case, anybody could have been in there on that day.
Without a solid legal foundation and rigorous enforcement, the housing market remains vulnerable to unsafe practices and exploitation. Addressing these issues is key to creating a safer, more reliable housing environment for all Lagos residents. The high cost of building materials in Lagos is significantly impacted by monopolistic practices within the market. When a few companies control the supply of essential materials, prices can be inflated, making construction increasingly expensive.
I think there are a lot of factors that contribute to the prices of building materials. You will find that for certain building materials, the cost of the actual material is less than 50% of the total cost. The rest of it goes to handling and transportation. Transportation is higher because of the cost of the petroleum products. The exchange rate also plays a large role in the cost of building materials, and so I think it's a multitude of factors.
This monopoly not only drives up costs for developers, but also for individuals seeking to rebuild or renovate their homes, exacerbating the affordability crisis in housing. Sand filling, a common technique in Lagos for land reclamation, involves raising land levels to prevent flooding and creating space for development. However, while it addresses flood risks in some areas, it can inadvertently lead to flooding in new areas because water must find alternative resting places.
We are not considering at times even the environmental impact of such sand filling exercises. Because when you are going to sand fill, you are going to, drive away water. You are reclaiming or sand filling to reclaim wetlands. You drive away the water, water will always find its level. And the water will now move to another place, causing problem. And that is why areas sometimes that were hitherto not liable to flooding are now experiencing floods.
This issue is compounded by unsustainable practices that exacerbate environmental problems like coastal erosion and unstable land conditions. The high cost of sand filling also adds to housing expenses, making affordability a significant concern.
But the problem we are having with the sand filling thing is that, it's not done in a very, sustainable manner. It's a big problem. Take, for instance, the Eco-Atlantic City, project here in Lagos, where, in fact, over 25 square kilometers of the Atlantic Ocean was reclaimed and now being sold at a very exorbitant, rate.
The issue of omonile, or land-owning families in Lagos, presents a significant challenge in the housing sector. These families often act as unofficial tax collectors, imposing additional levies on land transactions and property developments. This results in double taxation for developers and homeowners, driving up costs and contributing to the housing affordability crisis.
A lot of, development is brought about by foreign funds. And these guys don't understand some of these taxes. So sometimes when they look at a project and a lot of things look shady, to them it seems like unethical. And so they want to back out, right? Now, what of the middle class who is supposed to also contribute to housing, in their own little way? These bloated costs begins to scare them from getting into it. So you notice a lot of the real estate developers, they have to have security. Like they have to factor this into, their planning.
They are not meant to be as strong as they are, well, because we have a lot of weakness in enforcement and the corruption system. Because if you take an Omonile who came to extort on your land to police station, you can be sure that before you get home, the Omonile is back home ahead of you. You left him there, but you can be sure one way or the other that is why? Because they seem to be more awash with money. They seem to be ready, and their sponsors, government agencies, sometimes patronize them for the purpose of using them to fight political battles.
Moreover, the influence of Omonile families extends beyond taxation. They are often involved in land grabbing and double selling properties without legal authorization. This unchecked aggression can lead to violent clashes, creating insecurity and instability in affected communities.
As a company, we face that challenge a lot. Sometimes we don't know who should pay that cost. I've given you the price of cement is 7,000 or is 6,000 or is 2,000, right? And the cost of moving it to your site is 1,000. And then we have to pay 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, depending on how many checkpoints we go through on that day. Where does that cost go?
Allegations of backing from high-ranking government officials further complicates the issue, as their support can shield these practices from legal consequences.
I think it will either be to scrap it or to standardize it. If it's standardized, then people can plan. They know this is what it costs, right? And also create value. So what can these boys also do? Can they be the ones that make sure that potholes are filled? People will be happy to pay if there's something they also get out of it.
The convictions of these people have not been so much publicized in a way that you can say that people hear as a deterrent to others. But because just arrest and then nothing happens thereafter. And they come back and come and boast about their exploits one way or the other. The government needs to do something about them to curb their excesses.
As Lagos continues its relentless growth, innovative solutions may hold the key to breaking the cycle. Urban experts and housing advocates point to a combination of global best practices and public-private partnerships as potential pathways forward.
When a very good policy is put in place, you can encourage private developers, to develop cheap, so to speak, housing units that the common people can actually acquire and pay for. The Lagos state government has done something like that, or they've been doing something like that, but more still needs to be done.
Do we really have a housing deficit, or are we just concentrated in certain parts of the country? I think it's a bit of both. We need to deliver more housing, to be able to accommodate our population. But more importantly, we also need to take urbanization to other parts of the country.
We live in a digital age propelled by artificial intelligence. Technology plays a crucial role in potentially mitigating these issues. Digital platforms can enhance transparency in the supply chain, making it easier for consumers to compare prices and access a broader range of materials.
PropTech is simply property technology. So any technological solution that helps the property industry is PropTech.
From the depths of overcrowded slums to the towering heights of luxury apartments, Lagos' housing crisis reveals stark inequalities. Yet, amidst the despair, there is hope. A hope for better policies, more inclusive urban planning, and a city where every citizen, regardless of their income, can find a dignified home. As Lagos pushes forward, addressing this unyielding crisis must remain a priority, ensuring that no one is left behind in the race for shelter and opportunity.